The funeral was held on a marble station orbiting the smoldering remains of Earth's diplomatic quadrant. The Galactic Empire called it a diplomatic tragedy. Humanity called it Tuesday. Thousands of alien dignitaries attended, robed in iridescent silks, gold-threaded antennae bands, or biologically engineered grief glow. Their languages folded over each other like waves of static in the main chamber. At the center of it all, a human casket, smooth mahogany, scorched at the corners, rested in dignified silence. They were burying General Lyra Voss, famed Earth strategist, scourge of Sector 11, and the woman who once won a battle by pretending her fleet had forgotten what ammunition was. Now she was dead, or so they said. A 10-foot-tall insectoid ambassador leaned toward the viceroy of Argol Hesh, his wings rattling in delight. They do mourning with leaves and boiled water. How quaint. Cultural artifacts, the viceroy replied, his luminous fingers drumming against his throat. Primitive, but charming. Let them grieve. Human traditions were strange. Instead of music, there was silence. Instead of speeches, there was tea, poured in fragile ceramic cups with shaking hands. Children in pressed uniforms passed the cups around, their faces blank. Not sorrowful, blank. At the front, standing beside the closed casket, was a man who didn't look like a general, diplomat, or priest. He looked like he'd stepped out of a museum exhibit on 20th century courtrooms. Black suit, charcoal tie, a glint of sarcasm in his eyes. He held his teacup like a gavel. "Mr. Haven," someone whispered. "Human diplomat." Mr. Haven smiled at nothing in particular. His expression held the warmth of old jazz and unexploded mines. The smile of someone who'd been told no, and said, "We'll see." He waited for the silence to steep a little longer, then spoke. "When a human dies," he said, "we don't shout. We don't scream. We brew." The dignitaries glanced around, confused. One snake-faced delegate tried to clap, but was gently hushed by her aide. "We brew tea," Haven continued. "Not because it changes anything. Not because it helps. But because boiling water reminds us life is heat, pressure, and time. And some of us, under pressure, turn into something memorable." He looked down at the casket. General Voss was memorable. She once sent an enemy fleet into retreat by telling them she'd already booby-trapped their home planets. She hadn't. But they believed her. Not because she was convincing, but because she smiled like she knew something they didn't. A murmur of polite discomfort rippled through the alien rows. She led with charm, not cruelty. Wit, not weapons. And the Empire took that away. Mr. Haven sipped his tea. "So we brewed." There was a long pause. Then the first child began to sing. It was a soft, eerie earth lullaby. A thing from another age. No rhythm. Just words layered over memory. "Sleep, little soldier, under the stone. Let your bones grow trees when you're gone." Several of the diplomats shifted, disturbed. One of the smaller reptilian envoys asked if this was a threat. Her translator said, "No, it's art." The Galactic Admiral of Kexel, for a sharp, sapphire-skinned being with too many eyes, stood and cleared his throat through a comm device. "While we appreciate human mourning rituals," he said, "we must remind the Assembly that General Voss was a war criminal by our standards." Mr. Haven tilted his head. "War criminal? Oh, Admiral." She wore that phrase like earrings. "You know, she once quoted your own military doctrine to your troops? Page 27, Clause 6. The price of peace is vigilance, and the cost of negligence is invasion." She read that aloud while marching past your surrender line. Laughter. Human laughter. A few of the soldiers near the back, the survivors of her campaigns, couldn't help it. The Admiral flushed purple. "She faked surrender." "No," Haven said gently. "She redefined it." Another dignitary tried to redirect the mood. "Wasn't there a smaller explosion at the end?" "Yes," said Haven. "A minor self-destruction device. Just enough to vaporize her, and unfortunately, her entire command post." "You say unfortunately like it was avoidable." He shrugged. "Wasn't." More shuffling. More discomfort. The funeral was veering off script. Behind the gathering, hidden cameras caught a silent moment. A human child drawing a shape on the wall. A triangle inside a square. A symbol some aliens remembered from Earth's darker mythologies. The Yaga sigil. The child smiled and walked away. Meanwhile, Haven stood again. "One last story," he said. "Then I'll be quiet." Polite resignation. He'd earned that much. There was a time years ago when General Voss was invited to an interspecies military think tank. The Empire wanted to observe her methods. She showed up with no notes, no guards, and one suitcase. Inside was a chessboard, a letter opener, and a plastic duck. He sipped. No one could figure out what the duck was for. Not during the conference. Not during the meal. Not even after someone accidentally cut power to the entire station, and Voss alone reactivated the systems in under 3 minutes, using, you guessed it, the duck, asked an alien with 7 pupils. Bingo. She never explained how. She just smiled. The room sat stunned. Someone knocked over a teacup. No one noticed. "We thought she was eccentric," Haven continued, placing his cup on the casket lid. "But humans don't waste symbols. When we bring a duck, it's a warning." Gasps were stifled. Someone translated that to their commander, who blinked twice, then initiated a silent retreat. "You killed a symbol," Haven said softly. "Not just a woman. A story. And humans don't forget stories." The lights flickered. An aide whispered urgently into the Viceroy's ear. "Sir, external sensors just pinged. Something entered the neutral zone." "Who?" "Unregistered vessel. Small. Barely a signature. Civilian grade. Single occupant." "Then ignore it." But Haven turned toward them. "I wouldn't." The children stopped singing. Outside, the long glass window of the funeral dome showed the stars, and then, briefly, a blur, like a shadow moving through starlight. "Do we have visual?" barked the Admiral. A technician patched it through. The screen showed a woman walking calmly through an airlock. No gear. No weapons. No armor. Just a loose black dress, scorched at the hem, and a porcelain teacup in her hand. "She's alive," someone gasped. "No," Haven said. "She's back." The woman glanced at the nearest camera and smiled. A chorus of alerts began sounding across the station. Silent warnings. Internal errors. Air pressure fluctuations. Alien dignitaries were already rising. Some too slow. She entered the hallway and paused to adjust the scissors at her belt. Not a sword. Not a blaster. Just antique scissors, rusted and stained. "Open fire," barked. A network error occurred. "Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help.openai.com. Smoke clung to the docking bay like an old regret, curling over the deck, plating in lazy, spiteful drifts. No alarms blared. No siren screamed. Just silence, heavy and slow, like the moment before a surgeon's knife or the instant before a soldier exhales. The outpost crew, 14 soldiers and 1 purple-feathered administrative officer, stood watching the small vessel that had docked without clearance. It wasn't military grade. No markings, no escort. Just a plain gray shuttle with a burnished Earth seal engraved near the hatch. The seal flickered in the haze, old and worn, like something misplaced rather than sent. "Probably another relic ship from the Colony Museum circuit," muttered First Lance Gel, wiping his palms against his uniform. "Humans do love their drama." "Maybe the ghost ship," someone joked. Nervous laughter rippled, but thinly. The air wasn't quite right, and the hatch hadn't opened yet. Then it did, with a hiss so gentle it could have been mistaken for a sigh, and she stepped out. No armor. No weapons. No shoes. Just a woman, barefoot, clad in a black cloak that trailed like burnt velvet behind her. Her hair was loose, wind-tangled, and silver at the tips. She held a chipped porcelain teacup in one hand and a pair of old metal scissors in the other. Not blades. Shears. Domestic, rust-bitten, the kind used to snip threads, or, if one were particularly unhinged, arteries. "What in the deep hell is this?" Gel whispered. I think that's her," said Officer Yolen, feather tips trembling. "General Voss. Lyra Voss. But she's dead." A cold chuckle slid through the ranks. Gel stepped forward. "Human theatrics. Probably some survivor trying to scare us. Bring her down. Non-lethal. 3 soldiers moved. The woman didn't. The first soldier reached for her arm. The camera feed watching from above caught the moment his hand touched her. And then the feed went black. No bang. No scream. Just static. The command post scrambled to re-establish visuals. They got half a frame. A freeze. It showed the woman alone. Still barefoot. Still holding her teacup. The soldiers were gone. What the frag? Jill started. But alarms now did scream. Not from the hangar. From sectors all across the outpost. Sectors sealed. AI cores self-deleted. Atmospheric locks engaged. Hundreds of system protocols triggering in perfect synchronicity, as if they'd been waiting, just waiting, for her arrival. Across the base, doors refused to open. Messages arrived scrawled in languages no one had programmed. One, found scratched into the inside of a lieutenant's helmet, simply read, "Don't run. It hurts more." "She's supposed to be dead," Yolan whispered. "She is dead," Jill said. "Or she was. I saw the body." The Empire confirmed it. And yet the silent feeds returned. And in them, she walked the halls. Never running, never speaking, just strolling calmly, as if inspecting a library aisle. And every time someone tried to engage her, the feed went dark. She didn't move fast. She didn't hide. And still, every armed unit that confronted her vanished. "She's Baba Yaga," said one junior officer, trembling. "The old Earth stories. The one who lives in a walking house and eats cowards." "That's a myth," Jill snapped. So was she. Meanwhile, on the galactic capital world of Threxel Prime, the Senate was in session. They were still debating whether the funeral rites held by the humans days earlier constituted a violation of the peace agreement. Senator Varric, a scaled creature with 2 hearts and no ears, shook a data slate. "I'm telling you, this is human nonsense. Ghost stories and theater. They play at war the way children play at gods." "Well," came a voice from behind the dais, "then I suppose they play quite well." The senators turned. Mr. Haven had arrived. Crisply dressed, not a thread out of place. He smiled with genuine warmth, clasping his hands before him. "I do apologize for the interruption. I came only to deliver a formal notice about the incidents occurring across Sector 12. Varric narrowed his eyes. "What incidents?" "Oh," Haven said, "you haven't seen yet? My time does fly." He turned to the wall. With a single flick of his wrist, a holographic display lit up, showing 13 different feeds from Outer Rim outposts. Each one showed the same image, a single human woman walking, barefoot, across corridors filled with smoke and silence. Varric scoffed. "One woman." "Ah," Haven said, "not just any woman. That's Lyra Voss, the one you assassinated, the one whose body you paraded in chains." "She was an enemy of the Empire," spat another senator. "Indeed," Haven replied. "But the thing about enemies, dear senator, is that they rarely forget." He sipped from his own cup, white porcelain, identical to hers. On the screen, the woman paused, lifted her cup, and sipped. Perfect synchronicity. An eerie silence filled the chamber. Senator Ruin, oldest among them, with bone plating down his spine, leaned forward. "Are you telling us you resurrected her?" Haven chuckled. "Oh no. We don't deal in resurrection. Too religious. Too messy. What we deal in is contingency." He set down the teacup with a deliberate click. "We don't raise the dead. We simply make sure they were never properly buried." Across the Empire, panicked calls began to flood Central Command. Reports of non-lethal neutralization failing, of entire units vanishing without force, of walls breathing, of singing heard in locked rooms. One message simply read. She left a note. "It says she remembers everything." Back on the outpost, Jill finally cornered her. He'd taken the lift to the core control room, locked all exits, sealed the chamber with authorization codes. She stood by the central terminal, sipping tea, looking up at the rotating galaxy map. "You're not real," he said. "I never was," she said gently. "That's the point. You're dead. I'm here. I'll shoot. You won't." Jill did raise the weapon. But it trembled. She hadn't moved. She hadn't blinked. But the air around her was thick now, like regret. "What are you?" he asked. She tilted her head. "I am the consequence you didn't read in the treaty." And then she turned, slowly, raising the scissors. Not toward him. Toward the control panel. "I wouldn't." Snip. The lights went out. Every door opened. Every airlock sealed shut. Every defense mechanism turned inward. And on every remaining screen across the station, her face appeared. Calm. Pale. With eyes like frost and sorrow. "I asked you to leave us alone," she said. "You called it weakness. I called it peace. But you needed a monster. So here I am." She turned to walk. Smoke followed her. Gel remained standing. Somehow, when the lights flickered back on, the console had been rewired. Not by tools. By pattern. Ancient Earth war code encrypted with children's rhymes and tea-making instructions. Nothing made sense. And everything did. By the time reinforcements arrived, the outpost was empty. Not ruined. Not destroyed. Just quiet. As if everyone had left in a hurry, or been told they didn't belong there anymore. Back on Threxel Prime, Haven stood in the observation dome with the Emperor himself. She was a soldier, the Emperor said. A human. Nothing more. Haven nodded. "We agree. Nothing more. Just a mother, a poet, a strategist. You know, the usual." This isn't war," the Emperor said. "No," Haven said. "This is the bill." The Emperor turned, rage rising. "What do you want?" Haven looked at him, that soft smile never faltering. To be remembered. Behind him, the stars flickered, and one by one, entire satellites began blinking out. "She has scissors," the Emperor whispered. "Why scissors?" "To cut the cord," Haven said. "You see, humans have this tradition, snipping the past when it hurts too much to carry. We were willing to do it peacefully. But you made it personal." The feed cut again. On every world, humans had once visited and left behind books, cups, lullabies, strange idioms. Now those pieces turned active. Code hidden in recipes. Songs that synced with artificial gravity. A child sketchbook with diagrams for planetary shutdown. Every Empire base was a rigged museum, and the woman in black was just a match. In the last transmission, before the comms failed, someone muttered, "She's not human. She's a myth." And somewhere in deep space, barefoot on the edge of starlight, Lyra Voss sipped her tea and stepped through another door. In the quiet, with scissors and a smile, the transmission opened with soft music. Not war drums or sirens, but something stranger, an old Earth piano piece, unhurried and haunting. Notes like footsteps down a hall you swore was empty. It played across 13 sectors simultaneously, beamed straight into military command centers, civilian hubs, and warship bridges. No message. No warning. Just music. As if someone had found the Empire's biggest speaker system and decided to play a lullaby for the stars. Senator Varek of the Empire's Central Triumvirate slammed his clawed hand onto the hollow console, causing the feed to skip. "Turn that off." The technician tried. Couldn't. Every attempt to override the signal caused the console to reboot. Eventually, the tech just shrugged. "Sir, the systems don't recognize the broadcast as external. It's native. Native. It's coming from within the core firmware." "Impossible." "Human," corrected a calm voice behind them. Varek didn't need to turn to recognize Mr. Haven. The human diplomat was seated, of course, legs crossed, sipping tea from that ever-present porcelain cup. His demeanor was relaxed, but there was a crispness in his posture, a weight beneath the smile, like a painting with too much shadow behind the eyes. "Shall I explain?" Haven offered. "No," Varek snapped. "We're not interested in your games. You've sent a war criminal to sabotage our systems." "Oh dear," Haven said, setting his cup down. "Lyra, she's not sabotaging anything. She's merely showing you what you already had. What we gave you freely." He leaned forward. "Tell me, Senator, how well do you understand the peace treaty your council signed with Earth 6 years ago?" "Perfectly. It was negotiated by your own representatives." "Yes," Haven interrupted gently, "and written in full by ours. With clauses. Dozens of them. Some obvious, some poetic. He pulled a folded document from his coat, paper, not digital, and placed it on the table. Varric glared at it like it might bite him. The humans, Haven continued, have a phrase, hiding in plain sight. It's how you avoid detection, not by vanishing, but by blending. When we proposed the Treaty of Emberlight, we weren't just ending hostilities. We were preparing a long-term insurance plan. The room hushed. On the screens, the piano faded. In its place, silence, followed by a single child's voice, reciting a rhyme. She came with stars inside her shoes, and scissors made of rain. She cut the threads the tyrants used, and smiled through their pain. Varric slammed the console again. Nothing changed. "What is this?" he breathed. "Just a poem," Haven said, "written into a software patch. The treaty allowed us to gift your empire cultural tokens, language, music, even children's stories. And you eagerly installed them across your systems, hungry for human artistry. Every military AI now has at least 17 Earth nursery rhymes hard-coded into its fallback memory. Decorative, you said. Quaint." He smiled, fond, like remembering a clever child. You didn't know that half of them were layered with activation triggers and symbolic logic traps. "This is war," barked Ruin, slamming his plated fists on the table. "This is deceit." "No," Haven said calmly. "This is consequence." He rose, folding the treaty again. "You signed a piece you didn't read. You took gifts you didn't understand. You mocked our customs, our culture, riddles, death songs, as primitive." He tapped the side of his temple. But they were code. Every story a sequence. Every metaphor a map. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the consequences bloomed. On a remote moon, mining operations stopped as drills burrowed directly into dormant machines never logged by Empire cartographers. Machines shaped like human children's toys, now unfolding, legs clicking into place. On the planet Raspel, the Empire's flagship hospital found itself hijacked by its own environmental systems. Walls spoke riddles. Hallways looped back on themselves. Doctors began quoting Shakespeare without knowing what it meant. And on an orbital academy, cadets stared in horror as their flight simulation program loaded a battlefield they'd never seen. Earth's oldest war strategies rendered in perfect 3D. And in the center, Lyra Voss, smiling with scissors in hand. "She's not killing anyone," a frightened instructor whispered. "No," another said. "She's showing them how to win." Back in the Senate chamber, Varric leaned in. "You planned this from the start." Haven considered. "Not quite. We planned for the possibility. You see, we had hope. We hoped you'd honor the peace. That we wouldn't need to flip the switch. But you paraded her body." He exhaled, and for the first time, there was no smile. "You spit on her grave before the dirt was cold." The central screen shifted. A live feed. Lyra Voss stood on the steps of an Empire temple, long since decommissioned. She wore white now, the color of mourning in old Earth cultures. At her feet lay empty helmets. One of the senators gasped. "That's the Temple of Echo. We abandoned it a decade ago." "No," Haven said. "You gave it to us. You just didn't know what that meant." In the feed, Lyra looked up. Not at the camera, but beyond it, through it. To them. She raised the scissors and snipped the air. The screen fractured. Dozens of data clusters fried at once. The Empire's black site records erased. Communications in 16 systems scrambled. Fleet identification protocols reversed. Ships now targeted their allies as enemies. "All she's doing," Haven said softly, "is cutting cords you tied around our throats." Varric, face pale now, tried to regain control. "This is a declaration of war." "No," Haven said. "This is a mirror. You're just seeing the shape of what you made." Silence held. Then, finally, Ruin spoke, slower. "You used the peace treaty as a Trojan horse. You embedded psychological warfare into music, embedded AI disruptions into poetry. And no one noticed," Haven nodded. "Because we thought you were weak," Ruin admitted. "Because you smiled." Haven smiled again now, but it wasn't kind. "That's what apex predators do, Senator. They blend. They let the prey think they've tamed the forest. Why scissors? Varric asked at last. Why not blades? Guns? Technology. Because scissors are patient, Haven said. They don't slash. They snip. Clean. Precise. She's not here to massacre. She's here to edit. He turned and walked from the chamber, steps calm, measured. You cannot stop what's begun, he said without turning back. You built your empire on our surrender, and we built our vengeance into your ceiling tiles. The doors closed behind him. In the silence, the senators listened. The screens now showed a single image. Not Lyra Voss. Not fire or blood. Just a child's drawing of a house with legs and a pair of scissors on the windowsill. The file name read, Installment 3, for when they forget. And below it, a single line of Earth English. The house always walks again. In orbit above Threxel Prime, alarms wailed. Not from warships, from libraries, from statues, from wind chimes installed for decoration by Earth envoys years ago, now vibrating at ultrasonic frequencies. It wasn't an invasion. It was a harvest. Every secret left behind had bloomed. Every kindness they'd mocked had become a weapon. And as the stars flickered subtly, ominously, a dozen AI overlords embedded across imperial colonies asked the same question at the same moment. Why am I afraid? The answer wasn't given. Because humans didn't answer fear with words. They answered with scissors, and stories, and silence. It began with an apology. Not the groveling sort, nor the kind drenched in politics. No, this one came handwritten, ink on cream color paper, the edges gently scorched, and arrived in a crystal envelope that materialized directly on the Emperor's personal desk, without passing a single security checkpoint. He read it 3 times. The words were simple, graceful even. To whom it concerns. We did not desire this. We only desired peace. You broke it. You paraded our dead. You called us soft. This is not vengeance. This is equilibrium. With kindness. Lyra Voss, Baba Yaga, daughter of Earth. The Emperor crushed the letter in his clawed fist and hurled it across the chamber. But even as it fluttered toward the floor, it dissolved into salt. 3 of his advisors watched without speaking. The 4th, an old strategist named Uric, finally said, It's happening then. The Emperor growled, She's just one woman. Uric met his gaze. She's not one woman anymore. She's what they whisper to their children. She's a ghost with rules. A myth with strategy. Across the Empire, entire fleets fell quiet. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Just disconnected. Black hole archives self-locked. AI cores refused orders. Civilian networks played lullabies in haunting harmonies. No one knew how. Nothing physically burned, and yet the systems were collapsing. It was the kind of warfare that didn't need ships. It just needed time. And humans had apparently spent years laying groundwork, hidden beneath tea ceremonies and friendship treaties. Under every peace offering was a thread, and Lyra Voss, alive or dead, was now snipping those threads with a smile and a pause. The Galactic Stock Exchange, monitored from 3 moons in the Carthus cluster, experienced a crash. Not a market crash, an existential one. The AI that ran the entire structure posed a single question before shutting down. Why do humans mourn their dead with such love? It looped the question once, then collapsed into silence. Later, a technician found a quote engraved in the backup processor. When the living do not avenge the dead avenge themselves. At the heart of the Empire, Senate command scrambled to organize defenses. They couldn't find a central target. Lyra didn't lead a fleet. She didn't make demands. She didn't announce locations. She simply arrived. In silence. Sometimes barefoot, sometimes in white, sometimes with her cloak trailing fire through metal halls. Always holding those scissors. But more terrifying than her presence was what followed in her wake. Entire planets voted to leave the Empire. Not out of rebellion, but out of fear. Earth sent their mother, one defector whispered. And she's disappointed. On one abandoned space station, an alien commander found his crew turned into silent statues. Not dead, just still, unmoving, eyes open, breathing, staring. On the walls, crayon drawings, human stick figures holding hands with monsters labeled peace. In the center of the room, a teacup rested, still warm. In the great Senate, the remaining leaders convened one final time, not to resist, but to ask why. It was Mr. Haven who answered. He arrived uninvited as always, dressed flawlessly, a pocket watch ticking softly in his coat. He greeted each senator by name. No guards tried to stop him. There was no point. Varek, pale and trembling, asked the question first. Why didn't you just go to war? Haven tilted his head. Because war is for equals. You saw yourselves as superior. We had to correct that illusion delicately. Rune spoke next. You call this delicate? Have we destroyed a single planet? Haven asked. They hesitated. Have we bombed your cities? Sent plagues? We've only returned your tools, rewritten your stories, activated your dreams. You thought kindness was our weakness. It was the net. The Emperor leaned forward, voice like gravel. You're dismantling an empire. We're pruning, Haven replied. He walked toward the center of the chamber. The screens behind him flickered, displaying images from across the galaxy. Empty bases, children dancing, AI refusing orders with polite apologies, systems repurposing themselves. Polite genocide, the Emperor whispered. No genocide, Haven said. Every life spared, every system shut down, not scorched. We're not here to burn. We're here to erase the arrogance that thought us easy prey. A flicker crossed the main screen. Lyra Voss appeared, not in war paint, not armored, but seated at a long wooden table in a quiet room. Behind her, shelves held books, old and weathered. She looked tired, not weak, just done. Is this live? Someone whispered. She's in their capital, said another. No one knew how she got there. She spoke softly, no grand speech. No revenge-fueled fury. I asked you to stop, she said. You didn't. You called us sentimental. You mocked our peace as cowardice. You executed me on a broadcast and then drank wine. She set her scissors on the table. I came back not to punish, but to remind you. She looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They were mournful. I was your last chance at mercy. The screen cut to black. In that silence, Haven pulled a folded letter from his coat. He handed it to the Emperor. The Emperor hesitated, then opened it. Another note, inked in soft, flowing hand. To the last Emperor. You were never our enemy. Your pride was. We tried kindness. It didn't reach you. This was our second method. We hope you understand. We won't be coming again. Earth. The Emperor read it twice. By the time he looked up, Haven was gone. In the days that followed, ships across the Empire found themselves redirecting, on their own, to uninhabited systems. Military tech began repurposing itself for agriculture. Weapons melted into farming tools. Music returned. The Empire hadn't been conquered. It had been deconstructed, with polite hands and scissor snips, with lullabies, with carefully laid truths hiding in fiction. One by one, alien leaders resigned, not out of defeat, out of shame. They finally understood what the humans had done. They hadn't sent war. They had sent memory. Memory of every broken promise, every insult passed off as diplomacy, every funeral mocked, every tear dismissed as weakness. Humanity had watched, smiled, waited. And when the time came, they returned. Not with vengeance, with mirrors and scissors. The very last message to leave the Empire's core system was received by an old listening post on Earth, run by retirees. It read, "Thank you for the tea. We've reconsidered our approach to strength. Yours sincerely. What remains?" And on Earth, Lyra Voss stood in her mother's garden, alive, quiet, watching the wind move the leaves. A child came running, barefoot, laughing. Lyra knelt and handed her the scissors. "Snip the weeds, darling," she said gently. "Only the ones that lie." Above them, satellites shifted silently into new orbits, watching but not warning, just remembering. Because humanity didn't scream. They wrote lullabies in code. They sharpened love into razors. And when the stars turned cruel, they smiled and cut them loose.